First of all, Joe, I want to thank you for being a part of the program today.
Thank you, Rick.
The Grassroots Institute, once again, set the table for us, mission, how it's accomplished.
Well, the mission is to educate about individual liberty, economic freedom, and limited accountable government. I think we're the only group in town talking about that right now. And because if you read the news or if you read anything else, it's all said from a point of view that's very neutral, which is good. Grassroots tries to say the word should, though. Here's what we think, here's the neutral story, and here's what we think lawmakers should or shouldn't do. So we include that word should, and it makes it, really understandable for everyone, I think. So, yeah, that's grassrootsinstitute.org, and we have 40,000 people on our email list reading what we do, and they actually join us down at the state legislature and help us tell lawmakers what they should and shouldn't do as well.
No, that's the engagement level is so very high because despite the fact people like myself are in their 120-year range and being a part of observing and participating, you get a little worn down, and I share that. I'm just being honest. But what's helpful is information. What's helpful is that, all right, I can go to this locale, I can be informed and be understood. I'm not being pitched. There's no other agenda than what you stated at the opening. And that's one thing that's very gratifying for me personally. So today, our conversation is very top of mind, no notes, no anything. It's just, I'm a guy. We have the big square building that's underway. We have the city council. We have events such as Konolo 1 and 2.
Right.
We still have Maui that, for some reason, virtually off the map as far as our local news coverage.
Yeah, that's right.
And I love that we can revisit. But I want to start with Konolo's.
Yeah.
But by extension, it's also national policy. And I'm going to start with gas prices. President had in his address to the nation, listen, straight Florida moves, not for us. Not a big deal for us. Matter of fact, we have yields. You need oil, buy it from us. We got it right here. However, with that statement, we have HECO saying that we could see our electricity bills go up 30+%. Why? Cost of fuel.
Right.
We're at the pumps, and again, I haven't gone to the gas pumps, I haven't driven in a while, but it's in the $5 range again?
Oh, yes. Well, it's $5.40.
$5.40.
It's up $1 from a month ago.
Amazing.
And what we're doing at the Grassroots Institute is we're actually tracking the oil tankers in our office. We've got a map. We can see them all on our screen.
Right.
And there are a few that are actually taking advantage of this Jones Act waiver. So President Trump waived the Jones Act for fuel and fertilizer. And this is actually remarkable because it's the first time in a long time that the Jones Act has been waived, not for just a small jurisdiction, to deal with a hurricane in Puerto Rico or cleanup in California or something, but for the whole nation.
Right.
And so, and for so long too, 60 days. Now, I hope that the war, finalizes quickly so that we can get back to normal. But in the meantime, we're able to track all of these Jones Act tankers, and there are a few tankers coming from New York and Louisiana that we're seeing on their way to Hawaii that otherwise couldn't. Now, the way the Jones Act works, only U.S. ships can carry goods from one U.S. port to another U.S. port. So let's say from Louisiana to Hawaii. Only a U.S. ship could do that under the Jones Act. But now that that's been waived, any ship around the world could do that. And there is a ship, I think from the Bahamas, that with a Bahama flag, and it's traveling to Panama right now and then up it to Hawaii. Or they can serve the West Coast as well. It's not just Hawaii, remember. Shipping on the mainland from, let's say, California to New York or back and forth, that's important too. That affects us, economically as well. So it's unfortunate that we've got these high prices, but, it is interesting, at least, that we can see this Jones Act effect. Now, the problem, though, is that since prices are so high, it's almost like any tanker carrying goods anywhere is going to make a boatload of money, regardless of the Jones Act. So anyways, we're watching this. But I was saying, they should waive it for another 60 days or maybe a year. This is always what I say.
So John handed me a note. In 2024, the U.S. imported approximately 0.5 million barrels per day of crude and condensate through the Strait of Hormuz. This amount represents roughly 7% of total U.S. crude imports and 2% of total U.S. petroleum liquid consumption. Very low, of course, remains significant amid global market volatility, and I understand that. But the question is, why are prices so volatile here at home in Hawaii with only 2% of total petroleum liquid consumption that's affected by the strait? So the question is, are we getting gouged?
Well, we are getting gouged by other countries. Now remember, Hawaii cannot use non-Jones Act ships to carry oil from U.S. ports. So we get most of our oil from non-U.S. ports, all over the world, Asia and Africa. So we have gotten it from Russia, and that is affected. Those places are affected by the Strait of Hormuz. And so, in effect, actually, Hawaii, you could say, is even more affected than the rest of the nation because of this Jones Act law. So,
but with the waiver, though.
But with the waiver, though, hopefully we'll see some relief, yes.
But we do. I know Malaysia and Asian sources of petroleum. What's our refinery capacity here at home?
Well, we ship in about 50% of our oil that we ship in is of the dirty variety that needs to be refined. This is jet fuel anyways. And the other 50%, jet fuel, it just comes refined. No, that's more expensive to do. So we can do some, but, we still need to rely on a lot of imported oil.
Yeah, I just refreshed my addled memory. We had refinery capacity here in the islands via Chevron. Chevron closed, and so our ability to refine our own supplies, so we're paying a premium on refined product that we utilize. So is it, and help me understand, when we receive our fuel, does it go directly to the gas stations and into their storage?
Well, it goes out to, first, technically, it goes to Barber's Point. That's where the tankers drop off their oil and have a little pipeline there into the ocean. That typically goes to Par, Hawaii, where then it's refined or processed, and then it's taken to the and then into the gas stations. But then it, of course, has to then be transshipped to the other islands. Maybe with Young Brothers or something like that. And so, yes, it's all about shipping for us. We pay this enormous cost for travel. Now, another energy that we could use is LNG.
Yes.
And we do have some capacity to do that. Of course, the state is saying, let's move everything to LNG. We need to meet our renewable goals. And it's interesting that LNG somehow is categorized as renewable, by the way. But in any case, I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
But anyways, LNG, liquid natural gas, can only come in, again, from non-U.S. ports, because if it came in from a U.S. port, it would have to be on a Jones Act ship. And there are no Jones Act ships that can carry LNG.
There was also, wasn't there a bill circulating in the House or the Senate briefly regarding the exclusion of LNG?
Yes. So there's a debate about LNG because renewable advocates say, okay, this is a bridge fuel. It's a bridge to a renewable utopia. But other people say, well, actually, LNG is good on it, so let's just go to LNG. That's it. The price is lower, and if we can get it cheaper, and so there's a debate, a tug of war right now. And I think renewable advocates, though, don't really have a good alternative in mind. Right now it's just solar panels and wind farms, but the problem is that what's going to happen when we have a Kona low, for example, or 40 days and 40 nights of rain as we've had in the past, and if the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing, what's going to power our energy? We need some source of firm power. So that's why LNG is attractive too.
Right. But we've besmirched our landscapes with windmills and solar.
Yeah, that's the ironic thing, is environmentalists want renewable energy, but renewable energy has such a negative impact on the environment. Now, there's no solutions in policy, really, in what energy you should pick. There's only trade-offs, really. You can have, a clean environment, you can have firm power, you can have low costs, and all these different factors come into play. And so, oil, okay, yes, it's dirty. But on the other hand, at least it doesn't require the use of, thousands and thousands of acres of land. It can be, carried relatively in a small area, in a small container. So that's the good side. Of course, the bad side is the carbon and price fluctuations when a war happens, for example. So, yeah, it's all trade-offs. And I say we need the flexibility to go in any direction. We're on an island here. We can't do like what they do on the mainland, just plug into a nearby state. So we have to solve this problem all by ourselves. And the best way to solve it is to keep all options on the table.
So it's interesting because we have the cleanest air, I would argue,
that's right,
in America and beyond. We're not China, where if you want some air, you can go down, cut a piece out, put it in a bag, and take it home. So I've always considered the complaints about emissions to be a somewhat specious argument, because the days of where China is now, we're not even close. The emission systems, by edict or just by responsibility, the filtering and the emissions are, yes, there may be a presence, but negligible. And then you throw in the natural retort, which is trees. And you have an investment in the growth and development to counter the carbon footprints that we all make.
Well, yeah, and the ironic thing is one burp from a volcano can just, that just makes the whole picture look different. And I asked the State Energy Office once, are you actually considering the carbon emissions from the volcano in your analysis? They're trying to get down to zero carbon emissions on net. But they just kind of leave the volcano out of it. Because if they didn't, then there would be no way to get to zero, of course.
No way. That's amazing.
And we're far away from zero, but we're far, far away from zero. And the what it would take to get there would be dystopian. To put it honestly, you'd have to, everyone gets a different car. We all fly different kinds of planes, and our whole lives are sort of bowing to this sort of godlike utopian goal of getting to 0%. Why? Especially like you said, when actually we'll probably have the cleanest air in the world.
Amen. While we're on attack, and once again, Joe Kent, Grassroots Institute, meteorologist. What happened to the days of hydrogen? During the Lingle administration, she was right here in the studio. They were running prototypical vehicles
I remember that.
out Schofield side, and then poof, all gone. And we have, I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent, but you have vegetable oil. You have, there's all these others. Is it conspiratorial that any alternative has been squashed due to the dominance?
Well, the fact is that any energy source would take some kind of investment. And the question is, who's going to make the investment? Now, if it's too expensive, then everyone runs to the government. And that's why you see all these politicians talking about we're going to use ocean waves to gin up energy, and all kinds of fanciful ideas. And yeah, that it might actually work too. But what's the cost? Now, if you leave it to the market, though, to pay for it, if people on the market are saying, yes, we want to invest in this ourselves without government dollars, and we think it can be done, then that's a sign that it's actually a good idea. So whenever you see the government picking winners and losers, hold on to your wallet.
Right. But the Big Island, they have been successful with thermals for so many years.
Oh, yes, yeah, I visited the geothermal plant there. Amazing. It's an old technology. It's an old plant. Back in the 80s, 90s they made this, and it's still working, and it's actually powering 30% of the Big Island's power supply. Amazing, and of course, it makes so much sense to plug it into the volcano there. But they said that so many people were complaining about the smell of sulfur. Well, if you've ever been to the volcano side of the Big Island, it smells like sulfur everywhere, and it's not just the power plants.
Right. Oh my goodness, it's 7:29. Time flies when Joe Kent is in studio. Joe, how do we connect with Grassroot and with you?
Go to grassrootinstitute.org, and you can get on our email list, or go to Grassroot Hawaii on Instagram.
We're going to get together with Joe. By the way, open up the phones, 521-8383. Unique opportunity at this time of day to Q&A with Joe. If you have any thoughts, comments, questions, if you're concerned about what's transpiring at the Big Square Building, Honolulu City Council, Governor, Mayor, whatever it is, it's all open for you at 521-8383. We're at 7:30 with Joe Kent, Grassroots Institute of Hawaii. 521-8383. We've been spending time in regard to energy. As you know, it is the literal blood of a society. Very important indeed. We'll get into more of the Big Square Building. Get Joe's take on what's happening with the city councils, developments there. But let's go to the phones and check in with Kurt out in the Valley. Kurt, you're on with Joe Kent. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Rick. Good morning, Joe. My question is about last year, probably the year before, the governor uttered the energy N-word, nuclear, as something to consider. Did he get his mouth washed out with soap, or what's happening with nuclear in Hawaii?
Thank you, Kurt. Appreciate that.
Well, nuclear is a taboo word, just like you said, and in the state's constitution specifically prohibits the use of nuclear to power our energy grid. And so every effort towards nuclear, everyone says, well, you got to have a state constitutional amendment, and that takes forever. And at the same time, last year, I believe, there was a bill that passed, or a resolution, at least a study came out of the legislature that would study the feasibility of nuclear. And actually at the state, or at the energy conference last year, there were all kinds of people from the nuclear industry that came and presented on stage. And so if you talk to people in the energy space, yeah, it is interesting and people are talking about it, but the political feasibility is like next to nil because of that state constitutional issue. At the same time, if you look at submarines in Hawaii, many of them are powered by nuclear energy, and you could, just hook up a submarine to the grid and power probably the whole island. with one sub. So, for environmentalists, at least, it's an attractive option. If you look around the world, places that, there are all kinds of countries now that are very environmentally minded countries that are switching to nuclear, starting a nuclear plant, because it's a very clean energy, as long as it doesn't blow up, of course.
Well, we appreciate that part. But what's interesting, you mentioned the reactors that we have on board decommissioned vessels, and to be able to consolidate and provide. I can't think of a safer way than a standalone plant that people would have issues with after incidents in Japan. And,
Right.
the 3 Mile, that had so much impact on nuclear in America.
Oh, yes.
It just brought everything to a halt. But anyway, thank you very much for the call, Kurt. Very good indeed. I mentioned about the big square building. And Jonathan was with us on Monday. And in the time we had, we went through primarily budget and where we were with the process procedure and mysterious finding of $150 million.
Yeah, that's right.
But what else is on the agenda with bills that are percolating that we may not know about but could have an impact on us?
Well, you've got the emergency powers, of course, and we talked about that last time. And basically, that would limit the governor's power to issue endless emergencies by decree. And the way it does that is the legislature gets to vote to end the emergency. Now, there's all kinds of debates. Should this be 50% vote? Should it be a 75%, 2/3 vote, and so on? But the bill is moving forward. But a bill like that did move forward in the past, and the governor vetoed it, of course. So that's one. Then there's hair braiding. This is like...
Well, thank goodness you're here, Joe.
I know, this is like the great irony of my life. I'm always talking about hair braiding, and I'm glad you listeners can't see, but I have no hair. So
I'll just tune in to Channel 53. We'll get you online.
But anyways, there's a bill moving forward there, and basically there are hair braiders in Hawaii who would like to start their own business, but can't because they have to take all kinds of classes, thousands of hours, and pay $20,000
What?
just to get licensed.
Wow.
And this we're tackling this because it's an example of a business regulation that anyone should be able to open up a business. And the protection is the consumers. They choose, okay, we don't want to visit this business, so we go to a different one. There's a huge market protection. So the state doesn't always need to play nanny. And so that's another one we're looking at. But for the vast majority of bills at the legislature, they're all dying. It's a bloodbath, so to speak. And especially right now, especially with the 3 days that were lost due to weather issues and so on. So this is going to be a very an empty year at the legislature in terms of bills, which actually I kind of like that. I don't like them to be so busy, and I don't like them to be too productive at the legislature.
Amen. Amen. When we are looking at conference, I know that the main bills that people have their attention to, interestingly, it'll always come back to budget. And if you could help us understand as we're progressing, the tax policy was to be put on a pause.
Yeah.
However, there was not a pause for individuals of a certain income level, I believe 250,000, and they would be subjected to an even higher rate,
Right.
ostensibly to make up, I guess, for revenue. Now with the governor stating about $1 billion, we have not received the emergency authorization from the administration yet, and the city and the counties, they have their own issues that they have to deal with, obviously, but the state is kind of the umbrella. when it comes to disbursement of funds, say we do receive up to 90% of our recovery cost, what's the disbursement policy, procedure, and who ultimately makes the decision of who gets what and how much?
Well, a lot of it has to do with emergency proclamations, going back to that. Mm-hmm. And so that's why a lot of people rush to issue an emergency proclamation. Really, it's a financial reason to get the monies from the feds. Now, a lot of politicians are running around promising that they've talked to the right person and the money will come. The governor stated $1 billion, as you said. But I wasn't clear whether or not that was $1 billion of state infrastructure that needed to be repaired, or if was it $1 billion of farmers in the area or something. I saw a figure yesterday that it was maybe $150 million in damages. So I'm kind of confused exactly how much we're talking about here.
Exactly. Good point.
At the same time, though, we want to make sure that the money gets to the right people and so on, and the rebuilding happens as well. I'm having flashbacks to Lahaina. I'm sorry to say that. Yesterday at the Honolulu City Council, there was a big hearing about what happened where. Was the emergency director awake, or what's going on? It turns out that the streams were flooding, and they have all these meters on the streams that notify. Well, actually, that's the problem. They don't notify anyone if the water's rising too quickly. Someone has to be sitting there looking
literally,
at it.
Physically, yes.
And no one, I guess, was looking at it. And so the emergency director said, well, that happened a few hours before we were even aware of what was going on. So, that it's good that the Honolulu City Council is looking into this, because, yes, we need to fix the alerting mechanisms, just like we learned in Lahaina, too. I thought we learned this lesson already. And so, we need to look at the extent of the rebuilding effort that's needed. But at the same time, we've got a hurricane relief fund. Maybe some of those monies can be used. I think it's, $80 to $100 million in that fund. Then there's the budget surplus funds. That's $1 billion. And then there's even another $1 billion in another. It's called a rainy day fund. Mm-hmm. And we had a literal rainy day here. This is what these monies are for.
Right.
So I don't think there's any reason to raise taxes based on a weather glitch or something like that. I mean, this is more than a glitch, of course, but still, we need to keep our eye on the ball. If taxes raise forever to pay for this one-time event, that would be a failure, I think, and a failure of budgeting, really, because what they're not doing is taking a hard look at the budget. We had a budget from the governor, and as you said, the legislature got it, and they increased it during this time when we're supposed to be looking at cuts.
Right.
And so what we're saying is keep your eye on the ball. There's all kinds of wasteful spending, and we've identified, like I said, 100 of them. We've given 10 of them to the legislature because, it's a lot to read. And there's all kinds of cuts that would affect very few people. There's all kinds of monies sitting in special funds. You have $500 million just sitting in the coffers. You could take $100 million of that the auditor has said doesn't need to be in a special fund anymore, and you could use that for all kinds of things. So instead, there are the income tax hikes that they're talking about, and there's capital gains taxes and conveyance taxes and all manner of taxation. So in an election year.
See, this is, I think, for lay people like myself, is the frustrating part, because there's no doubt people will put the parallel of their own lives in relationship to government. And I know in houses everywhere during these times, and most times, spending. Stop spending on stuff you don't need. And if you do have some left over, okay. But you got to take care of your business first. That's, I think, what ires so many because now we're poised for another salary increase
Right.
for at the city level.
Yeah.
And we're all looking around going, whoa, what happened here? I believe the new number for a city council member will be about $118,000 a year.
Wow.
That at the latest look out of the salary commission. I'm going, wait a second. This is not a career.
Right. Yeah. This has to be one of the most highly paid council member positions in the whole United States. Absolutely. And there's an argument to be made, though, that the council should be paid much less, of course. And if they were paid less, maybe they would do less. The thing is, a lot of times lawmakers say, hey, look how much we're doing. We're so busy. And so therefore we need a big paycheck, a higher paycheck. But, on the other hand, why are they so busy? That's my question. What are these busybodies really doing? Are they really making our lives better? And then you can also look at the metrics. The government has all kinds of metrics. In fact, the state has 2,000 pages of metrics that they look at for how every single program is doing. And almost nobody looks at this ever. The council also, all of the counties also have their own metrics as well. So if you wanted to base a pay raise on that, which I don't think they do at the Salary Commission, has homelessness gone down? Have people stopped moving away? Is it easier to build homes that people need, and so on? If you base it on that, then okay, maybe they deserve higher. And okay, on the other hand, there's an argument for paying council members much more if they actually, did their job effectively.
Yeah, that's 749. I want to get this before we get to the traffic. I understand that a proposal is in place for the defunding Office of Economic Revitalization. This is Amy Asselby's office. I just hosted Deborah, the assistant, last 2 weeks. The question is, I believe I read in a grassroots treatise that questions arose about form and function and relevancy of this department. Your thoughts?
Well, it's good that Honolulu is taking a close look at the budget with a scalpel. And yes, economic development, is this really the role of government? When the framers made the Constitution, were they thinking of the government as, a business revitalizer for Hawaii, or what? And I've talked earlier about the government should not be picking winners and losers. So if you look at the Office of Economic Revitalization, or there's many such offices across Hawaii, they often don't have metrics that are looked at closely. Okay, they give a grant to a farm or to a business. How did that business do? How did they perform? Any investor, by the way, that we're giving monies out would track very closely. Banks track very closely whether or not the monies they're giving out are actually turning into a profit, right? But the government doesn't have that requirement. And so, they are not incentivized really to pick the right winners and losers and so on. They're incentivized to make it look like they're helping the economy. Now, I don't know, maybe they're doing a good job, I don't know, but it is a good idea to look closely at their budget and consider cuts.
My estimation is that it was a creation of COVID, because they were the clearinghouse department for the disbursement of federal support monies.
Right. I remember now. Thanks for jogging that.
Yeah,
that's right. Actually, we should make some kind of rule. Any COVID ancient thing that was set up, should be abolished.
Bye-bye. Except outdoor dining. Let's keep that.
Let's keep that part.
Let's keep that one going.
And Zoom.
We're at Zoom too.
Yeah.
752, Joe Kent with us, 521-8383. We're talking story, but talking about big square buildings, city council, and more. Stand by. We'll have more Joe in a moment. We're in the waning moments. Boy, I always know it's a good conversation when the hour goes by in 10 minutes.
Time flies, right?
That's how it works. Before we go, so I'm embarking on something I don't want to share too much on, but it has to do with ag and the estimates of $40 million impact to local farmers. Inventory, I mean, some have had their entire crop eliminated. And there are moves afoot to try and help and assist focused on farming. But the redefinition of the Department of Ag, which has been underway, when did this change come to where they had an expansion from agriculture to, it escapes me, I'm sorry, to where they are more involved, what is it? Schutzkas.
Yeah, the special designation for agriculture.
Yeah,
yes.
it's anyhow.
Important agricultural lands.
But there's something else. It's like gives them power and authority that they can investigate, intervene, even encroach upon a particular property if there's a threat.
Oh.
There's like a...
Are you talking about the invasive species?
It's part of that, but the bottom line is this. Department of Ag was funded just a few years ago, just right above the office of the governor. I mean, there was like no commitment for ag. Has there been an increase in funding, and with the troubles upon us, anything percolating to really help farmers?
Well, there has been an increase. In fact, there's been an increase for all departments, it seems, almost all departments. And so agriculture has seen a huge increase in their budgets, especially after COVID, of course.
Right.
Now, I'm not aware of the agriculture departments helping the farmers that need help after the, the rains and the weather storms that we've had, but they certainly have the money to do so. I mean, right now they lend out, millions of dollars every year to various agricultural ventures. And the stipulation for these loans is that a farmer has to go to the bank and be denied by every single bank. And once they're denied, then and only then are they eligible for the state loan. And so it seems backwards. So these loans, by definition, help farmers that couldn't convince a bank in their idea, in their business plan.
Right.
And as a result, the default rates on these loans are very high. And I was talking to one of my banker friends, and he was laughing. He's like, "We would never, allow that in ours." And so these loans, by definition, are taking a big loss. And I'm saying, okay, if you've got farmers that need help, like you're saying, when it comes to recovery and rebuilding, maybe the money should go towards that instead of to, bad investments or something. Or maybe it should just be reduced altogether. And if we look at the actual response that has happened after the disaster, it wasn't really the government that was doing a lot. It was nonprofits, churches that all came out in droves. And we did see politicians standing in front of the camera and on Instagram, of course. But, I always warn people, don't look to the government to save you after a crisis. Look to your neighbors and friends and churches and nonprofits and, roll up your sleeves.
This has been a phenomenal time. Thank you for coming in today. Remind us again about contact information, what we should be on the lookout for, maybe a tease. Are we still on for the big event?
The big event in September 4th is our 25th anniversary gala. We're featuring Adam Carolla at the Sheraton Waikiki. That's a comedian, Adam Carolla, talking about why are people leaving these high-tax, high-regulatory states. September 4th, come to our website at grassrootinstitute.org to sign up.
On that note, thank you so very much. Joe Kent, and I will see each other soon.
Thanks so much.
Stand by, Chad Blair coming up.